Okay, Mayor, the meeting is yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening, folks. We certainly want to welcome everyone to this very special meeting of the Vinton Town Council, along with the Vinton Planning Commission. And we're going to have a work session this evening to kind of finish up some of the changes and discuss the new ordinance. So I'm very excited about that. I think I'm 6 feet away from everyone, if not more, so I'm going to take this off so that you can hear me. So, Susan, do we need to call roll for the Planning Commission?
No,
No
just go
roll
on
call.
to the work session. Mhm.
Okay. All right, so Nathan, are you going to start the evening? Thank you, sir. Always good to see you. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, and members of the Planning Commission. So this is part two of the work session concerning the zoning ordinance update. So we'll actually just pick up where we left off in the previous meeting using the same fact sheets and PowerPoint as a guide. Once again, during this conversation, feel free, like at any time to, this is a time of work and, work sessions to discuss things and talk to each other, and we can figure out the best things with this final stage of the process for the zoning ordinance update. So starting up tonight is regarding the homestay regulations, or proposed homestay regulations.
Is it just a second?
We're going to put the PowerPoint up here. And so homestays, they go by different names, and there's different companies that operate these, but really when it comes down to it, there's zoning implications of this, but there's also tax implications of this. The magic number is 30 days, so if you have any kind of lodging use that's less than 30 consecutive days in the town, you're considered a transient use, which puts you in a different category, so like a hotel, bread and breakfast. But specifically when we're talking about homestays, we're talking about somebody that's using their residential unit that they live at as their principal residence, running it out on a short-term basis to individuals. So so a good definition of this is the accessory or secondary use of a existing residential dwelling unit. And so the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that this is someone's principal residence. This isn't an investor owner that owns a property and then they're utilizing one of these platforms to rent out properties in the neighborhood on a short-term basis. This is someone who lives here and they want to use their single-family home or really any kind of residential dwelling unit on a short-term basis. So the first major hurdle that a lot of local governments have with these is because there's a lot of this is utilized through online platforms, is to ensure that these are registered. And so first off is the zoning aspect of it, but then also, as I mentioned earlier, because you are in the category of being a transient use, you'll actually be paying transient occupancy tax, just as a hotel would, or any others based on our financial codes, or taxation codes. The way the registration is set up to run would be throughout the calendar year, so it would be January 1st through December 31st. So the use regulations for these, some of these seem like common sense in terms of safety, because they're going to be not the same level of a hotel of the building code requirements of the hotel would have to meet, because it's it's someone's house. But there are things that are included within this that ensure some level of safety, and also it makes sure that there's not a detriment to the nature of the neighborhood. So really the goal would be for these to operate in such a way that someone could operate it, but the neighbors not really know that their neighbor's running an Airbnb or running a business out of their house, because that's not the overall goal of this. The goal is for the property to stay residential, to stay the person's primary residence, and then they would, this is used as more of like a secondary form of income. So just going through this list, the rooms could be rented on a daily or weekly basis. The maximum stay proposed to be 14 feet, or 14 days. Talk about setbacks so much, think about days. 14 days. Minimum stay is 24 hours, and in addition to this, the principal guest will have to be 18 years old. Also there's a maximum a number of rooms that could be utilized. That's actually something that the building commissioner recommended, and actually has to do with the building code. Once you have more than 5 sleeping rooms, it actually puts you in a whole other building code category. So that was the reason why that was included. Trash schedule has to be posted, and then in addition to that, because of the way these things function, you always want to have some kind of 24-hour notice. So the property owner would have to have their contact information available at all times. So if there were any issues with any kind of fixtures, or they had questions, they could contact the host and have the information provided to them. And this puts less of a burden on the town, because it's ultimately up to the host's responsibility to make sure that the safety and the property is being maintained in a way that meets our town codes and also the requirements of this ordinance. Safety regulations include having a fire extinguisher in a kitchen, carbon monoxide and smoke alarms in sleeping rooms, ensuring that there's ways of egress to get out in the case of an emergency. And as part of this registration process, at least for the first initial registration, there'll be an inspection to make sure that that these things all these boxes are checked. So the big question is, what happens if one of these homestay uses, say the neighbors start to realize that they're not following the safety regulations or some of the use regulations listed, or just general town code violations. So there will be a way to potentially, obviously there will be a way to enforce this, but there will also be a way to potentially lose the ability to have a homestay. But in order to ensure that it's not just an upset neighbor who has like a poor relationship, they'll have 3 strikes, but it has to be substantiated complaints, and there'll be more than just 3 random complaints. They'll have to be substantiated within a 12-month period. And then even in the case of a suspension or cancellation, the individual can appeal to the town manager or the town manager's designee. And then it's really the burden of the host to prove that they weren't in violation of this homestay ordinance. But someone just operates it in a safe way and it meets all these regulations, it won't be won't foresee any problems. The biggest thing will be if someone tries to operate a homestay without first registering and following all these things, or following all these stipulations with the safety and use regulations. But I do know that in early conversations with the Planning Commission, we were discussing, what if someone just had an issue with their neighbor, they found out they had Airbnb, so we wanted to make sure it wasn't that these complaints, it wasn't just someone submitting numerous complaints and then the person losing their ability to run a homestay. But the bigger implication of this is actually what we discussed in our last meeting, would be if council and the Planning Commission have any thoughts on the ADUs and the accessory dwelling units that we talked about previously, if they would be able to be utilized, and the homestays would be able to be used within those ADUs. Seems based on previous meetings and also based on our surveys with our community meetings and online surveys, it seems like that most of us and most of the respondents of the surveys are in favor of the accessory dwelling units, like those apartments or those garden cottages, mother-in-law suites, whatever you like to call them, would be able to be used in this kind of homestay format. So if that's still a consensus, we can continue having that allowed. I think it falls into the same realm of a secondary income. So.
Yeah, I think if you're going to spend the money to have one of those for an ADU and you don't need it for that anymore, or an ADA, whatever it is, what we call it. But if you don't need it anymore, then, you know, now you can't use it but to sit in the backyard and use it as a shed or something. So I would say yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense to me, sure.
But
Yeah, and for like just an example would be, you know, if someone had a garage with a second floor that they converted into an apartment, they could use a platform like Airbnb or VRBO to have someone that's visiting the town or visiting the valley to come stay in Vinton, and they would, you know, in a short-term basis be renting out that accessory dwelling unit. Some localities have different, you know, they'll permit homestays, they'll permit ADUs, but they won't permit homestays to be utilized within ADUs. So that's the reason why that question was brought up. So the next major subject area is off-street parking regulations. So we took the parking schedule and we modernized it and refined it. So over time, and our planning commission, you know, we went over this in previous meetings, but a lot when these schedules were being made in like the 80s and 90s, it was a different kind of push towards of maximizing off-street parking. But with the push towards more initiatives towards walkability and alternative forms of transportation, the greater trend in most local governments is actually to reduce your off-street parking requirements. And you know, you see now when you go to certain uses, you have like deserts of pavement that are never used, and maybe around Christmas time they're used, but during other parts of the year you have a large parking lot that's never utilized. And a lot of that is because of previous zoning requirements that required a lot of off-street parking. So we went through and tailored a lot of our uses and modernized a lot of the parking schedules and changed the way, changed the different requirements so that they're more based on the square footage of the building than on really arbitrary things. You know, like for a church in the past, it would be based on the number of pews, but really it makes more sense to do it based on like the assembly area of the church. Or for instance, you know, with a restaurant, a patron's not going to use the back spaces in the back of the house. So we would base the off-street parking based on like the seating area, not the kitchen and back of the house square footage, because this makes more sense to do the parking and off-street parking calculations based on that way. So that's more refined and clear in this code. If you remember from the community meeting, we had like a display that showed the way we're due to, you know, stormwater implications, and also the push towards encouraging greater stormwater practices in the town. We're also proposing a maximum motor vehicle parking. At the time of that community meeting, we were actually proposing 125% of the minimum number required maximum for the off-street parking requirements. But based on a lot of the response of our citizens at the event, and actually going back and looking more at the scale of the town, so we're more dense, 3.2 square miles. It actually makes more sense to have that number more at 150%. And the next slide shows the reason why the 150% makes more sense. So these are just two examples. So if you have a new business with, based on the ordinance, if you go to the fee schedule or the schedule of uses, and you see how many parking spaces would be required. If the minimum was 11 parking spaces, with this new maximum vehicle parking requirement, that use would be maxed out at having 17 parking spaces. So they actually wouldn't be able to build more than 17 parking spaces unless they, through engineering, they've shown that the stormwater, they could implement some best management practices on the property that would offset the stormwater runoff and adverse impacts of stormwater, or they can utilize alternative forms of landscaping that's like this pavers and impervious surfaces that they can park on. But in a smaller scale, you can see like 11 and 17, it's a pretty small differential. But if you look at like a larger shopping center with a much larger area, you can see how the 150% makes a much larger difference. So say they ran the calculation and their minimum was 200, the maximum would be 300. So you're looking at 100 parking spaces, which is, 100 parking spaces is a much larger range. But you can see the difference between a small business development and a larger shopping center. But we saw originally that 125%, it wouldn't have given a developer or any kind of anyone who was doing not just a commercial use, but anyone who was trying to do any kind of non-residential use or any use that required maximum parking, it wasn't giving them much leeway between the minimum and the maximum. So the 150% kind of opened up that range a lot more. So these are two, there's, in terms of additional provisions for reducing the amount of off-street parking, these are two creative ways that the town could also implement what we're proposing to reduce the amount of off-street parking required on a property. The first provision being on-street parking. So if our Public Works Department determines that there's adequate on-street parking adjacent to a property, what we're proposing is that due to it being accessible to that place of business or use, that you could reduce the amount of off-street parking on your property by 1 space for every 20 feet of lot frontage on the street. 20 feet, your average parking space is about 18 feet. So if you if you have a public street and Public Works determines that on-street parking is adequate there, and it's legal on-street parking, it would be just another option for for a business to not have to try to provide and match as many off-street parking to meet the requirements. Not that, I mean, obviously you see we're trying to reduce the off-street parking as a town in general, but this would just add an extra benefit if someone had obvious on-street parking adjacent to their property. So really this is on-street parking substituting off-street parking requirements. This would be on a case-by-case basis. Additional reduction we're proposing is and it's due to the proximity to public transit. So if a use or a new development was within proximity to public transit that met the ordinance requirement, which is what we're proposing is 1,200 feet via a normal pedestrian route of travel, they could actually reduce their off-street parking requirements by up to 20%. And the reason for that is because a lot of what we found when we were redoing and realigning the bus route in 2019 is that a majority of the users of our public transit system right now are actually workers who are working various shifts in the town. So, you take a business, in the past you look at it just off-street parking, you're looking at the staff and employees and including the patrons. But if a lot of the staff and employees are actually riding the bus, I mean, that's less of a requirement for off-street parking and less of a burden on needing to have these parking spaces for staff and employees to park. So that would, a lot of the localities that already have public transit across the nation already do this. And Roanoke City currently does have this reduction as well with the public transit. It's a 20% decrease, which is a pretty substantial decrease in off-street parking requirements. And the way our bus route is routed, and the recent change in 2019 that was performed, a lot of our bus route is actually along commercial corridors, and so 1,200 feet of a normal pedestrian travel would accommodate for a lot of those commercial properties that are gonna need the necessary parking in order to be developed.
Nathan, for clarification, of the two options you just mentioned, is it either or can both of those be applied to a particular project for reduction of parking?
Both of these provisions could be applied. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah. So both of these provisions they're like, there's two options. So if there's available on-street parking beside a parcel and it was in 1,200 feet of a public transit route by normal bus travel, then they would be able to do both. So off-site, off-street parking arrangements, these become more popular, especially in higher density downtown areas. There are other cases where this would take place, but mostly the time it's within downtown areas of localities. But really what we want to do, we already allow this in a lot of contexts, but we wanted to refine this and actually allow it for more uses. Right now it was tailored toward only a few use categories that could even utilize this kind of parking arrangement. But what we found, if someone could have an agreement with another property owner and a pedestrian could safely traverse from a parking space to the use, why not allow them to utilize some of that parking elsewhere and allow that off-street parking elsewhere to count towards that business's off-street parking requirements. So this would be the case of like, if someone didn't have enough parking on their own lot, but they had a parking lot down the street, and they could develop an agreement with like a 20-year parking agreement with the owner, and we would count those, even though they're off-site, we'd count those towards their off-street parking requirements. And then that's just the arrangement to continue to kind of gets into what that agreement would have to look like, and it being a permanent easement, and some of this is more the detailed look about the way that calculation would be addressed. Finally, this is a big one. It would be more of an enforcement piece as well as the maintenance of parking areas. Currently, there's not a maintenance provision. We have we have different requirements for the way that parking lots are supposed to be set up, and different requirements for the way that they're structured. But then once they're paved and once the signs are up and the lines are done, it's kind of just hands off from there. But including maintenance of parking areas will actually allow the town to make sure that property owners maintain a safe parking lots and upkeep a lot of the required signage that was required at the time of the development indefinitely. So that includes signs and the maintenance of the asphalt and pavement as well. So any questions on the off-street parking? If not, we'll move on to the dimensional revisions. So based on the study, and actually this was recommended by consultants that we were utilized through a grant that we received through VDOT in 2018, and further study by staff, it showed. So right now in residential business, we did a quick review of all the properties in the RB residential business district. And if you know that district, it is a mix of commercial and residential uses, but there's single family houses that are being used as residences or commercial uses. But because of the time era when they were built, they were actually built to traditional neighborhood design guidelines. So it's kind of looping back in time, because now the big push is actually going back to developing properties in such a way that it meets, has lesser setbacks or more walkable. So looking at the properties in RB, we found that if you look at the current landscape, only 51% of properties were in compliance, and all the rest were legally non-conforming. So if you have a lot of properties that are legally non-conforming, and almost half, it really isn't. It's not a worst case, but it's also not a good thing to have so many legal non-conforming, especially within one zoning district. So changing it, the setback, the front yard setback in RB from 25 to 15 will actually allow for all of those currently existing properties to be brought into compliance, and also it will ensure future development is already made walkable, as a lot more of those properties along the RB corridors are developed and open up the business over time. So that it would increase compliance of the existing properties to 83%.
You say all, and then you have 17%.
So 83% of all of the currently existing properties would be would be considered not just legally non-conforming, but legally and conforming, legal conforming. So with all the economic development in our downtown area, and also the push towards more mixed-use style developments with residential, commercial mixes, we're recommending to increase the building heights. Right now, it's capped at 35 feet in our central business district. We're recommending 45 feet or 4 stories, whichever is less. This would allow for more of those developments where you have the commercial storefronts on the first floor and residential above. And when we get to the use section, you'll see that we're also proposing to change our mixed use provision to allow for more of that style development. So that would allow, when it says story, if you look up and try to Google the definition of story, there is no definition of story, especially when you're talking about commercial or residential. But so that's the reason why we had to add the 4 stories or 45 feet. But 45 feet would allow for a typical 4-story building in that kind of context. In addition, in the CB district, we're recommending to have a maximum front yard setback. We don't have maximum front yard setbacks in any of our districts, but as our downtown, our downtown area is walkable. We want it to remain that way. Having a maximum yard setback of 15 feet will make sure that those buildings are kept closer to the sidewalk, closer to the roadway. We're recommending the minimums because what we've realized is a lot of utilities and a lot of our existing properties are actually built to the 0-foot line. You can actually see just a quick review of most of the structures downtown. Most of them at the 34 count actually have a 0 setbacks that are built up to the property line in the right of way. So we recommended not having a minimum front yard setback in our CB district, causing other properties to become legally non-conforming. So we want to keep it at 0. So any questions on dimensional? So new and revised uses. This is a major change and a major proposal. So currently in the town, any form of multifamily development, such for example an apartment, would require a special use permit, and that's across the board. It doesn't matter about the density or how many units there would be included in that apartment or multifamily development. Our R3 district is a high density district. It's within a residential zoning district, we have R1, R2, R3. R3 being the high density, which is made to promote this kind of development. We did an analysis of localities across the state of Virginia and the Commonwealth, and most all recommend some form of apartment housing in their high density districts, like their equivalent of R3 by right. They do it in various ways. What we're recommending is to do it by the amount of dwelling units per acre. So what we're recommending is that if someone proposes in the R3 district an apartment development, which they still have to follow all the supplemental regulations and all the applicable regulations about stormwater, ENS controls, and everything included in our zoning ordinance, that if it's 12 or fewer dwelling units per acre, that would be allowed by right, that they wouldn't have to get a special use. And then between 13 and 24 dwelling units per acre, that would trigger the special use permit process where they have to go before Planning Commission and council before final approval. But open to this conversation. But what we did realize is that most all localities do allow for these smaller density apartments that are, 12 or fewer dwelling units per acre really isn't that dense. So allowing us by right would just allow a developer to purchase land in the R3 zoning district and not have to go through that special use permit process. And with our current, our most recent census and population and, the growing demand for more residential units, we're obviously going to need a balance between maintaining neighborhoods that are characterized more by single family, but with the R3 district already being zoned that way, encouraging those kind of higher density developments so we can have more people in the town of Vinton is always a pro. So we can utilize that land that's currently not being utilized and it's vacant. So alternative financial institutions. The main definition of these, and this is more of a Venn diagram, but there is no overlap. Alternative financial institutions would be a financial institution that's characterized by any of the uses listed in the definition. So in the definition includes places that have check cashing as a primary use, motor vehicle title lender, payday lender, precious metal dealer, and then financial institutions are like banks, credit unions, other financial firms. And so what we're recommending with this is that alternative financial institutions would not be permitted in our downtown district. They would be allowed in GB and other zoning districts, but what we're recommending for alternative financial districts would be for them to not be permitted within the central business district. And that's just to preserve the downtown. Usually those types of uses have adverse effects, and they would still be allowed by right and GB in a general business district, but at least for downtown, not even allowing them by special use. It would just be not permitted in our downtown area. There's better uses for our existing stock of commercial properties in the downtown area. Next use I want to talk about would be, and this has been a goal for a long while, is to figure out a way to regulate the difference between a massage parlor and a massage clinic. So you can see the definitions of the difference in the definitions, but overall, the Board of Nursing in the state of Virginia, it regulates who gets a therapy license or not. People have to go through many hours of training in order to attain that as a licensed therapist in the state of Virginia. And it's actually considered a medical use because of its certification under the Virginia Board of Nursing. What we're recommending is for massage clinics to be treated as medical uses, but for massage parlors to be treated as adult uses. And really, overall, what a massage parlor would be a location that seems like it would be a place where massages are being administered, but the individuals that work there do not have a Virginia Board of Nursing or not licensed by the state of Virginia to do therapeutic work. So that's the recommendation, and the greater implications of that actually go beyond zoning. So, well, first staying within zoning, when you're an adult use in Vinton, you're only allowed by special use permit in our M1 and M2 districts. And then additionally, there's taxation implications as well. The Virginia General Assembly has set its own kind of classification for massage parlor licenses. So if we do adopt the zoning ordinance, we'll have to adopt language within our town code as well to set up a massage parlor licensure. There is no, the state has clearly made no limits to how high that number would be, but we would look at adjoining localities and set it as others do. Roanoke County's is at $5,000 per year. But the overall goal would be to discourage that kind of use in the town of Vinton. On a brighter note, The counseling services, so in our current ordinance, anything related to like psychology, psychiatry, you're just going and sitting in a room with someone and talking to them as a professional, that actually would require a special use permit in the town. So what we're recommending is actually to remove that special use permit stipulation for counseling services and just lumping them in under the office definition. Because right now the office definition includes things like legal firms and, just a working environment, medical, medical office, any kind of clerical work or management work. This is the same kind of thing. It wouldn't be a overnight, rehab center. This is just, someone going and meeting someone part of a 24-hour day about any of the guidance or counseling services they would need. But it would just be allowed anywhere where office use is permitted, which is typically, office use is permitted by right in most zoning districts like RB, GB, M1, M2.
We only have one of those right now, don't
Yeah, there's,
we? Right out there?
there's one off of West Cleveland Avenue, and they had to go through the special use permit
We
process.
used to get there.
Yeah. Which is not ideal when when you're thinking about like the stigma around mental health as well. But yeah, this would allow someone to open a business like that without having to go through the special use permit process.
All right, how would we protect the neighborhood if the person had not good intentions? By letting this, would that other office, turn them away?
Steve, could you clarify more? Sorry.
Okay, if somebody decides that they want to open another counseling business in town, and they don't have to get a special use permit, the special use permit allowed us to question them what they were doing, and then when it renews, if they didn't do what they said they were going to do, we could stop it. If you give away the special use, if you stop the special use for that, how are you going, will this office give us teeth in our regulation?
The biggest,
The special use was a protection for the town.
the biggest aspect of that would just be enforcement. Because any kind of zoning violation in the town can be enforced. So if they were to get a zoning permit from our office based on the definition of office, and they veered away from that definition, that it would be a code violation. And there actually is an alternative use that about substance abuse centers and like for example like methadone clinics, those would still require a special use permit process. The main difference between this kind of use and that is that pharmaceuticals are being given out, and it's not just someone in a room talking with somebody. But if you're doing any kind of medical procedures on anyone or dispensing any kind of narcotics or anything of that nature, you would no longer meet this office.
And I'm not against
Oh, no, yeah.
people coming to town.
I understand the
and doing
concern.
This one over here. Never heard anything about it, but we have it in the regulation. If it doesn't, they won't get renewed. So that's, we want to make sure that we don't give away a regulatory thing that we may need to use.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like I said, enforcement will be an important piece to this to make sure
But
that it stays.
it is in there under the office side. We could still do that.
Yeah, it would, any kind of zoning violation could be enforced. And actually would be enforced in the same kind of format of, someone losing their special use permit is very similar to someone losing their zoning permit for a property. There'd be different track.
You're still gonna have the special use, you're just taking counseling out of the special use.
We'll have a special use permit requirement for substance abuse treatment centers.
Now, you're still gonna have the special use for other things. Are you doing away with special use altogether?
Oh, no, just,
So it still remains, because we've got other businesses in town that operate under special use, and we've allowed them, and generally, we've had no problems. We've had signage, it's the only thing that I can think of that we've ever had any problems that we've allowed a special use.
yeah, there'll still be, the specialty, in each zoning district, there'll still be a list of things that are
This
special.
is just one that didn't fit in there, that you're gonna put in a different classification, is really what you're doing.
Exactly, yeah. And just using a existing definition, or amending an existing definition to allow for that.
And possibly with, when you worked on that CBD, what was that? 20 years ago. And, that is in some of the things that go on now that weren't there.
Yeah, in that case, we have to see how the state navigates those kind of things. Yeah. But no, thank you for bringing up that point, though, for sure.
Dave, I guess we should say this stuff wasn't there legally. I do have one question. The wording right at the end of this, it says, "This shall only occur for part of a 24-hour day." And you mentioned this earlier. I just want to make sure I understand that's the wording we would need to prohibit overnight kind of a residence thing,
Yeah, that's just legalese for not being overnight.
Thank you, Mark. So, okay, so I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that as well. So, research and development facilities, this is just as we move, we see more tech uses. We're finding that we started having a lot of requests to have things in our GB and Central Business District that was not quite wasn't quite manufacturing, but also wasn't quite office use. And so because they were doing research and development. So we developed this new use classification, and we're proposing it to be included by right. But this would involve, your typical research and development of different technologies and working with computers and developing products and appliances, but it wouldn't allow for, the definition is tailored to not allow for like a mass manufacturing of any kind of products within these buildings. So it preserves it from being manufacturing and it falling into the industrial use category, but also keeps our, if someone was permitted to do this in a downtown area or GB district, it would prevent it from becoming like a mass market or industrial use.
And that goes right along with the Ms. Patterson's group that's in the health building. New businesses that are starting.
Exactly, like incubation.
That's usually what they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example, like some kind of incubation center. But if someone was actually one use that they have is someone trying to develop new battery technology or new sources of energy and research that, so it gives them that space and format to do it. And the main stipulation is as long as like sound and odor, noise isn't being emitted out of the building that would disturb other properties around it. That's the main stipulation with these. So dogs are becoming more popular. And as people go back to work, they need a place to keep them. So developing a pet daycare facility was a task to include within the zoning ordinance update, but then also, in addition to this, was ensuring that that there was a difference between a use having an outdoor component versus a use having a completely indoor component. So this is with if you have an animal facility that's completely enclosed, and this would include like a veterinary office that happened to, maybe they do boarding as well. If it's completely enclosed and they have no outdoor play areas, like where dogs are maybe kept in a long-term outside, as long as the building's soundproof and air conditioned and meets those supplemental regulations, it remains in that by right. However, say you use like a pet daycare facility where someone just watches the dogs during the day, and maybe as an accessory use they do overnight boarding as well. We added a use for pet daycare facilities and vets with outdoor components, and with these they would require a special use permit. And that's because you'd have to review for these supplemental regulations, such as the facility not being within a certain distance of a residential zone district, screening the outdoor play areas, and then just regulations about what time of night they're going to have the training of these animals.
Would that be for our friends
Field of
right
Dreams.
across from the firehouse?
Yeah, Field of Dreams would fall more in line with this pet daycare facility. Pet daycare facility, and they do training and other services. But pet daycare facility would be anywhere where someone like grooms dogs or trains them, and as an accessory use does overnight boarding as well. But the 300 feet rule is just because with dogs like barking, is just making sure that the noise doesn't travel and disturb residential areas.
So Nathan, you're saying I can't bring a bunch of dogs to my house and snuggle them and call it a daycare?
Closest house is 300 feet,
Oh, yeah, I'll measure.
way over 300 feet away.
That'd be my dream job. Just have a doggy daycare.
So this was a very similar to the counseling use in the sense that we just looked at a definition and realized that that it needed to be removed out of the special use permit category. So looking into the current definition of motor vehicle and body repair in GB, the installation of and removal of engines and and transmissions and other major body and mechanical parts, that actually required a special use permit. However, looking into the work on a transmission and installation and removal of engines, it really didn't cause any more adverse impact on adjoining properties than any other work that's done at a property. So we actually are recommending removing the special use provision and allowing that by right in our GB district. But however, body repair and the painting or storage of wrecked vehicles, obviously that's a whole other classification and could have adverse impacts on other properties. So that would still be something that would require a special use permit in that zoning district, in the GB zoning district. So we added the classification of breweries and distilleries. These already exist, but it was more about adding a definition to our zoning ordinance to make it more clear that this is a microbrewery, this is a micro distillery, this is a distillery, and this is a brewery. A brewery is more of like the mass production. That would be more tailored towards your industrial districts, with microbreweries being something like Twin Creeks, where it's a smaller outfit, and it's based on the state code about the production per year. So our residential business district has never permitted any form of retail use, at least in the current ordinance that was made in 1995 when our ordinance was readopted. So We have had requests to allow for some form of specialty retail in the zoning district, but, looking at the zoning district and seeing what kind of retail would work in these, you wouldn't want to permit any kind of retail that would be more intensive than what's already permitted in that zoning district. So right now in RB, you have like offices, like legal offices, and mostly just like dentist offices, legal firms. So the idea with a boutique retail store and shop would be to have a specialty retail that wouldn't produce any more traffic or really have any more of an intense land use than something like a bank or any of the other currently existing RB zoning districts. So this would actually allow for this kind of specialty retail with a really specific definition, but really it's just a specialty retail store that's has a cap of 2,500 square feet. So it wouldn't allow for a big box store to come into our RB zoning district and to completely disrupt the nature of that zoning district, but it would allow for most all of the currently existing single-family residence structures and a lot of the units within strip malls within the RB district to be utilized in that format. On the flip side of that, large format, the general trend, and this actually has been proposed since 2008, is to allow or to require a special use permit in the case of a big box store, or in this case, a large format retail store that is going to be larger than 30,000 square feet. And this is just a good practice because it's going to have traffic impact, it's going to have it's going to have stormwater impact, it's going to have a lot more impact on the general public and our citizenry. So having a special use permit would allow for us to address those things early on in the application process. And 30,000 square feet, you're talking about a very large store, like on the scale of a major retailer.
What's Lake Drive, what would the square footage of that?
It would be over 30,000 square feet if it was developed all at once. Kroger and Tractor Supply.
So it would be a place like Lake Drive, so we don't have anything close to anything like that now.
Yeah, and if a property was going to be in, like, according to the ordinance, it says newly constructed or enlarged. So it was going to be a newly constructed building that's more than 30,000 square feet.
Big lots, if that would have gone that way, that could have been that way.
Yeah, if it was.
The new big lots.
Yeah, the new one. And the big thing also is that it's whether it's on a single lot or contiguous lots as well. So even with the property lines, it's more about looking at the whole development as a whole, seeing the square footage.
Excuse me, Nathan, if we can back up just one paragraph or so there. The small retail stores, shops and boutiques and residential, I want to make sure I understand that is for RB, but not R1 or R2 or anything like that. Is that
Yeah, that
correct?
would only be for RB.
RB, okay,
Yeah.
so, okay, as long as it's RB, I guess I'm good with that, because I think currently, if we allow something like that, for instance, in maybe a hairdresser in R1, then we limit the number of cars.
Special use.
Yes, I was going to say it, and it's a special use permit, and I assume that still exists, or am I jumping around here somewhere?
Yeah, so that still exists. And actually, glad you brought that up. Because those are more tailored towards personal service businesses
Personal,
specifically.
okay.
So, like David was saying, a special use permit and our R1 or any residential zone district, someone can apply for a special use for personal service, but that's hairdressing, a tailor,
Right.
someone who makes wedding dresses and does that, like fitting. But it would not include a retail use.
Okay,
Yeah.
exactly, and this just, it's kind of brought to my mind that we do allow that sort of thing, like you said, hairdresser and everything, special use permit, so all that language is still in here then.
Yeah, and it would be actually more specifically defined as like a personal service home business.
Yeah,
Because
forgotten the term, okay.
yeah, because we have the home occupations like the home office, but then if, the main rule behind that is not having employees or staff or patrons or your customers come to the house.
Right.
But if you were to, but if you wanted to have, if you had a business format that, that wasn't retail, but you needed the people to come to the house because you're doing things like Pilates instruction, want to get a special use permit in the town, or a hairdresser that's like a one-chair beauty salon, then you could apply for that special use permit in the residential area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the mixed-use building requirements, this was a kind of a major provision to change, but it actually was a pretty easy change. In the current ordinance, there was a cap on the amount of residential mix you could have with a commercial residential property, and it actually capped it on a ratio that would prohibit the amount of residential that would be allowed with commercial use when there's a mixed-use property. We're proposing to remove that ratio and allow for someone, if they have a commercial like on this picture, someone had a commercial format on the first floor, to allow them to have that 2 or 3 stories, where in the past it would be capped at a 1-to-1 ratio. Just wanted to mention, and this is more about just the supplemental, adding supplementals and being more exact about drive-up facilities. But in the post-COVID world, there's a lot of inclinations that drive-up and drive-through facilities are going to be more and more popular. So we just refined the supplemental regulations and associated with drive-through facilities. But this is actually kind of like a rendering of what a lot of fast food restaurants or businesses are moving towards, is having a smaller building footprint, but a heavily vehicle-focused building format. So we're kind of getting ahead of that curve by going ahead and making sure that our drive-through standards are contemporary and up to par. Want to draw attention as well to addition of categories of outdoor storage versus outdoor display. And this kind of gives a good example of the difference between an outdoor display area and an outdoor storage area. With outdoor display, that is truly just a display of merchandise. Think when you go to a place like Lake Drive, and they have like the pumpkins and other things that are up close to the building. And if you see in the fact sheet document, there's definitions and supplemental regulations about what constitutes outdoor display. So this is just a smaller stack of merchandise that's close to the building. It's not up near the road, but it just allows for companies and businesses to have some form of outdoor display that's shown that's outside. Outdoor storage area is a whole other one major note. Outdoor display areas would be allowed by right in RB, general business and central business. On the flip side, outdoor storage areas, that's more of like what you're seeing in the picture to the right. Massive outdoor storage of lay yards of pipes, equipment, any kind of major outdoor storage area would require a special use permit in a general business district. If a business currently has outdoor storage that doesn't meet these regulations, doesn't meet the screening requirements, they would be grandfathered in. And also in general businesses, the outdoor storage would require special use, but in M1 and M2 industrial, it would be by right. However, they would still have to follow the same supplemental regulations.
Could that outdoor display area, could that be the farmer's market too?
Actually, I didn't, in terms of public uses, I didn't, we'd have to tailor this definition. I'm glad you brought that up. We'd have to tailor the definition to look at uses that are more agricultural in nature or community facilities like the farmer's market. It's just, it's different than the format of what we're looking at here. It could potentially still, I'll have to look at the definitions, but it could still fit within this based on the way we view that shelter area and how they're situated. So, any questions on the new and revised use regulations?
Mayor, if I may just point out that we are at 7 p.m., but if it pleases council, we just have one more section to review, so I think we might have adequate time if it's okay to
Works.
proceed.
Works for me.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So the final subject area we want to talk about tonight is the proposed landscaping ordinance. So currently in the town, we have the buffering and screening yard requirements, and in addition, certain use categories would have to screen, like dumpster areas and dumpster enclosures. That's and usually screening is only required, in the case of when a buffer yard is required, or in the case of a motor vehicle use, there's supplemental screening requirements as well that are included in that. Having a proposed landscaping ordinance, this is an entirely new portion of the zoning ordinance that would require holistically new requirements for development. During the community meeting, we were able to allow individuals to look at models and see what would be required for different forms of new development. But some of the biggest changes would be things like the requirement of canopy coverage. So based in your zoning district, having a canopy coverage requirement. And if you're following the fact sheet, this would be on page 5. A canopy coverage requirement in the district, based on your zoning district, it's the idea that within your area of disturbance or your limits of construction on your property, over the course of at 20 years after the planting of trees, so somewhat of a portion of the property would have to be covered by tree canopy. And that would just be a general flat percentage. And any kind of landscape architect would be able to look at the species of tree, take the lot area, take the canopy area, and figure out that percentage. And then the bigger implication would be the parking lot landscaping with more specific rules, such as in a parking lot, when there's every 10 spaces, you have to plant one tree within an island. Or in the case of the entire parking lot, you'd need to have 5% of that area covered with some form of vegetative ground cover. And this has stormwater implications. That's the large purpose behind any kind of landscaping requirement, is having more pervious surfaces on a property. But we also, we've tailored this in a way that it's very straightforward. Like, it's very simple for someone to follow. The landscaping plan would still be developed by a registered design professional, like an architect or engineer or landscape architect. But it's very straightforward, and it's reasonable. This allows for more trees to be planted on the property, and for parking lot areas where there's going to be a lot of pavement, a lot of there'll be more trees planted as well, and other areas with impervious surfaces. In addition, there's more solidified and more detailed requirements for the buffer yards and screening. So when I mentioned earlier that only some uses would have to have their dumpsters enclosed with screened with a fencing material. Now all uses, it wouldn't just be narrowly focused on just a few uses. It would be all uses that have a dumpster or proposed dumpster would need to screen that. And when you go through the landscaping ordinance, you'll see that there's different options about how to screen. There's different options between using fencing or vegetative options. Evergreen trees are what's used when trying to screen properties. But there's also the option to mix between architectural, like having a fence with trees, and having the option to, be creative within these guidelines. So these, all of these regulations, on the front, they may seem very rigid with meeting the percentages, but getting to that percentage and getting to the goal that's laid out there, there's a million different ways to get there, and people can be really creative, and it's a very common sense approach. So if your parking lot really isn't that big, there's going to be ways for us to look at it and make a determination based on how small it is that let's do an alternative landscaping plan to address stormwater and runoff impact on this property. And there's always going to be, I call them safety valves, built in throughout this entire portion of the ordinance, where if something does not make sense, we as staff and the developers are not going to be handcuffed to these regulations. There's going to be ways to work, meet the goals of this ordinance, but through a logical approach and a creative approach, still meet the demands through different subjective determinations. So it looks daunting, but really it's more about just canopy coverage and parking lot trees, parking lot landscaping, and then also the addition of when properties are adjacent to public streets, having like trees planted along public streets as well. And this will be, like I mentioned earlier, about the on-street parking. This also too would be on a case-by-case basis, because every parcel has a different configuration, different size, different shape. So it's more about meeting these goals, and but also still meeting the goals of reducing.
So at
Impact.
Parkside Plaza, around back, you've got those, I think there's 6 businesses, and they all have individual dumpsters. So those individual dumpsters under this have got to be screened, is that correct?
It would only be, we can't retroactively go and require dumpsters to be enclosed.
Is there a grandfather?
Yeah, it would only be new development, or new, new dumpsters that are being brought in.
Thank you.
Taken on the planning materials, section 622, trees used to meet the requirements of this provision shall be selected from the current list of landscape trees approved and published by the zoning. What is that list?
So I don't have that list with me, but we're going to work with local landscape professionals that know what kind of trees survive in this climate, because a lot of those lists, you find that they'll have things that 10 years from now people just shake their head about why they were planted.
Like in the house.
Wait, what type? Yeah, that'll definitely not be. And then that list will also it'll have recommendations about what trees are used for screening, what trees are used for canopy, and differences. But because we're not landscape architects, I think we're going to defer to them on the creation of that list.
So Nathan, just briefly, I know we're over time here a little bit, but just briefly, I certainly want to thank you for the presentation, and of course all the hard work that you and the Planning Commission has put in on this, and certainly the Planning Department. I know there's been a lot of work go into this, and I'll let Councilmember Lyles speak to the fact that he's pointed out quite some time ago that we needed to do this, update our ordinance. So this is a big step, and from what I can see, it's a great update. It meets modern circumstances as compared to some of our older stuff. So I certainly want to congratulate all of you guys for for this ordinance. I think it's great. And again, thank you for all the hard work. And I'm not sure who the chairman is of the planning commission, but if you want to introduce the members while they're here, and we certainly want to thank our planning commission for all the work they've put in on this.
Chair would be me, Mayor.
That's what I thought. That's the reason I was looking your way.
And yes, I would like to introduce Dave Jones, Sarah Reed, and Bob Doninger is with us tonight. We are actively looking for another member of the Planning Commission. There is a slot open, so perfect queue right now to anyone interested in being a member of our becoming a member of the Planning Commission. Certain rules, I think a lot of people are interested. However, most of them think that they live in Vinton and they don't live in the town. So the one main requirement is you have to live within the town. So.
Besides your leader, great job. Thank y'all. No, but thank you.
I will say that, we've met often about these ordinances for over the last 2 years, and it was a lot of work, and really it all fell on the planning commission, the planning department to do it all, and we're looking at the guy that put most of this stuff together every single day, and then have it together when we would meet. So
Yeah.
Nathan has really worked super hard on this.
And I don't think it could have come at a better time, because as we continue to spotlight Vinton and things continue to happen, of course, I'm a firm believer that people are going to continue to come. And when people come, we've got this in place so that we can cover whatever somebody brings at us to update them everything. So yeah, thank y'all. As one council member, thank y'all very much.
Yep.
The only
Perfect timing.
The only thing with you saying that, perfect timing, is, Vinton has changed a lot since 1995. And before that was 1950. So I would challenge anyone on council and the planning department to not wait, over 25 years to do this again. Stay up with the times, and let's, like Mike said, we are up and coming again, and it's stay on top of these ordinances so we are a more welcoming, fair, and up-to-date with our ordinances as technology and things change.
Right. Good point. Things change, and we certainly have to keep up with it. So what's the next steps here? Where do we go?
I think we,
Yeah, thank you all. And like I said, we at the planning department, we couldn't make any of these ordinances without the direction and guidance of the planning commission and town council. So thank you all.
Right. So I guess this will come back to council for formal approval soon?
Not in February, probably sometime March, maybe early April.
Okay.
Yeah, the planning commission public hearing is scheduled for February 24th
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
to vote on the recommendation of adopting the zoning ordinance.
Okay, great. Council, anything else y'all want to say?
Good work.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. That's a lot to do, Nathan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, all of you in the planning department and the planning commission. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay. Since we're all here, what do you say we have a council meeting?
okay.
You want to go straight to that, Susan, or do you have to?
No, I think we're fine.
Okay, well, we will continue on unless you folks need to take a break or anything. Sure. Okay, yeah, let's take a 5-minute break, okay?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I think it's going to be a little longer.
5 minutes.
All righty.
Who you talking to?
Okay,
I mean, should we put them on?
ready? Yeah, I'm ready.
We are.
Oh, we're ready? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. Once again, folks, I want to welcome you to the Benton Town Council meeting for this Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 already. Susan, would you call the roll, please?
I will. Councilmember Laws.
Here.
Councilmember Mullins. Here. Councilmember Stovall.
Here.
Vice Mayor McCarty.
Here.
Mayor Gross.
Here. Okay, folks, as most of you know, we just finished a work session with our Planning Commission, and once again, we certainly want to thank the Planning Commission and the Planning Department for all the work on the new ordinance. Very exciting. I would remind you, if you're visiting with us, I think we're all home folks, but if you ever get a chance to council meeting, we do have a set of guidelines that's always available near the front door, near the entrance. With that, we will have our moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask you to stand for both of those items. So we use a moment of silence here in Vinton so that everyone can pray or meditate as they see fit. As always, I would ask you to keep this country, this community, and certainly this council meeting in your thoughts and prayers. As far as the pledge goes, Councilman Lyles usually handles that. Who's going to do that this evening?
I have asked Cody Sexton to lead us in the pledge tonight.
All right. All right. He's a multi-talented guy, so I
Yes.
think if you'll stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of
America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, folks, for that. And with that, we'll move on to our announcements. And the Vice Mayor McCarty usually does that for us.
Yeah,
What's going on?
that's good stuff, good stuff. Lancerlot, they have hockey games on February the 4th and 5th. The 4th at 7:30 p.m., Tech plays Richmond. And then on the 5th at 4:30, which is that Saturday, Tech plays UNC. And open skating on the ice is every Saturday in February from 2 until 7:30. Rosie's presents live music on February the 4th. It's $5 shake at 8 p.m. February the 5th, the Thrillbillies at 8 p.m. February the 11th, Full Circle at 8 p.m. And February the 12th, Michael Winslow at 7 and at 9. The Benton Area Chamber of Commerce is calling for all vendors to sign up for the Senior Expo on March the 21st at the Benton War Memorial. That will be from 10 to 2. For more information, you can call the Chamber office and speak to either Angie or Catherine, or you can also go to the website at www.bentonchamber.com. The Benton Chamber is also selling Benton yard flags, house flags, and yard flags, and Chastity has some here. The yard flags are $12, and the house flags are $20. And you can order those, again, by contacting the chamber office and speaking with Catherine or Angie. And we have the, I'm assuming everybody. Yeah, it's really cool. It's got the star on it, and it's got the dogwood.
Is that double-sided, like this?
Yeah, this is just the print, the actual ones are double-sided,
Double-sided.
and they're made of like the flag material, not this like silky.
Got it.
Very
Cool.
nice.
Very nice, very nice.
Very, very nice. The other thing that's going on is the Restaurant Week of 2022 is February the 15th through March the 1st. Chastity has got us hooked up with that as well. So Love is in the air for 2 weeks this year. She's starting February the 15th. Some of your favorite local restaurants will be dealing out specials in different tiers. So show the Roanoke Valley restaurant some love and visit yesroanoke.com to see all of the participating restaurants. And here is the flag, which I think is adorable. It says, "All roads lead home to Benton, 24179. So go get one of those. Those are great. It'd be really cool to have everybody have their Benton flags up, especially during the Dogwood, which will be here before you know it. And the only other thing is happy Valentine's Day, because we will meet the day after Valentine's Day next. So, and that's all I have, unless somebody else has something I forgot.
Okay. Anything else? Any other announcements?
I have one, sir.
Yes, sir.
Have a movie premiere. In 2018, Watchmen Pictures, they filmed a movie here in the town of Benton at the police department. And it's taken this long because of coronavirus, of course, to produce the movie and make it. But anyway, on February the 10th at the Grand Inn Theater, they will be showing 2 movies. One is called Hearts of Fire, which is the second movie, and then they will premiere Princess Cut 3: Beauty from Ashes, which is the movie that was filmed several locations in Benton, to include the Benton Police Department, where one of the main characters who falls in love with a young lady is a police officer, so he wore our uniform, drove our cars. And several officers are in the film, or at least they were filmed. Now whether they made the cut, I don't know. So February 10th from 5:30, and then the second movie's at 8 o'clock or somewhere around that time.
But the movie you're in,
Yep,
you're in the 8 o'clock movie,
I'm in the second one.
the 8 o'clock.
You made the cut.
We'll see. See.
Man, send us over.
Off the top of my head, Chief Foster at the time was in the movie. Officer Dustin Bray, myself, and a couple other ones were in scenes. Now, whether we got there or not, it just depends on our talent.
Oh,
That's
oh,
exciting.
boy.
Yeah.
10th at the Grand Inn.
All right.
Oh,
Nice,
Like a
thank
red
you.
carpet event.
That sounds
movie
great.
night, movie night.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that
Oh, that'd be
announcement.
fun.
Be sure to send us a postcard from Hollywood, man.
No, he can't leave.
And February the 10th is a Thursday, for everybody who was wondering, like I was.
Cool.
Thursday night.
All right. Thank you, sir, very much for that announcement. Anything else? Nope. Okay, folks, the next item is, will council, you have any request to postpone or change anything on the agenda? Hearing none, we will move along to the consent agenda. Tonight, it contains the minutes of our regular meeting of January 18th. Any corrections or additions? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Awards and introductions. So, Chastity, I understand you got some special recognition?
Good.
Very good. I'm going to set this here for now so I can give you all a little, hello, Mayor and members of council.
Good evening.
Good evening. A little less than 2 years ago, Kat Pascal reached out to me about a networking she was trying to start for Latino women. There's a small group of women in all professions of life that would just need a small space to meet at one time a month. Their mission is to lead with a purpose and a passion together, building Roanoke's region and the NRV's community of professional Latinos. We just celebrated their first anniversary at the Benton War Memorial where it started, and now they have over 300 members. Wow. Also, I'd like to add that they have brought us several bookings since all this started. I asked Kat if she wanted to say anything, and she said, "Thank you to the town of Benton for always supporting all walks of life." And Chastity didn't say, "Yeah, I support them." She got right behind us and said, "How do I help?" I'm humbled to present this Government Municipality Award, and it says, to the Government Municipality, Chastity Barber, Town of Benton. This recognition goes to a government entity who supported the advancement of Latinos Network. So I wanted to thank you, council, for letting me have the freedom to support our community. I'll pass it around.
Thank you.
Chastity, thank you. Good job. Good job. We appreciate your hard work and thank you for letting us know about that.
Oh, no, thank y'all for having me.
Great organization. We appreciate you.
It turned out really neat. I was super surprised. So when I got there, I was invited, of course, to the first anniversary. And I had to run out. And so I was going to come at the end because she sent out an itinerary and it said the awards at 8 o'clock. I was like, hey, I get ready to leave. She comes and chases me. And she's like, where are you going? What are you doing? And I'm like, huh? She was like, you have to stay. She was like, y'all, you're the only venue they gave us a chance.
Wow.
And I never knew it until then. So the whole entire time I had no clue that people were shutting their doors. So
Yeah.
I just think it's really cool.
Well, I'm glad we were able to provide a welcoming venue for those folks. Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds like a great organization.
Oh, yeah, they're great. Great group of ladies.
Thank you, Chastity. Good work.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, next item is citizen comments and petitions. I don't see any hands flying up, so we will move on to the public hearing for tonight, which involves the Stormwater Assistance Fund. As per usual, I will open the public hearing and we'll have a report from staff. Hello, Anita, good to see you. So the public hearing is officially open, and after she has her report, we'll take comments from the public and the council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council. Last year in July, the Town Council authorized staff to submit Stormwater Local Assistance Fund for the Woodland Stream Restoration Project. And we submitted the grant application in December. Last year, we were notified that we received the grant application. This is a reimbursable grant program. And per state code section 15.2-2507, we are requested to hold a public hearing when we had to amend the budget by 1%. The total amount of the grant is $285,000. The total project is $570,000 with 50% to be matched by the town of Vinton. So we have involved the property owner of Woodland, and the main goal of the project is to reduce the sediment that is runoff to the waterways. So if we are to complete this project, we'll be able to meet the town of Vinton municipal separate storm sewer system TMDL sediment allocation. I'll be happy to answer any question that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to make comment? No? Council? Questions, comments?
I don't have a question, but was that July when we saw those pictures?
Yes, ma'am.
That, it doesn't say, I mean, that sounds like a long time ago, but it seems like we just saw them.
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm glad we moving along on that.
Yeah, me too. Those were pictures that we don't easily forget, right?
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
Incredible. So, any other questions or comments? Okay, council, you have before you a resolution that would approve the amendments to the budget as explained by Anita.
Close the public hearing.
Pardon me?
You want to close the public hearing?
Let's close the public hearing. Thank you, Susan. Let's officially close the public hearing, and so that we can consider the resolution as I just stumbled through. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Mullins, second by Councilmember Lyles. Susan, please.
Call the roll.
Yes, call the roll.
Councilmember Lyles?
Yes.
Councilmember Mullins?
Yes.
Councilmember Stovall?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McCarty?
Yes.
Mayor Gross?
Yes. Thank you. And Anita, thank you for that report. Okay, we'll move on to the town attorney. So obviously Susan beat you to the punch. But good to see you, Jeremy, and your very spiffy tie there. I like that. We need that bow tie. We didn't get to do it at Christmas, man.
Easter's coming up.
There you go.
There you go.
He just wanted to tie it today. You got to stay on top of it or you forget.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
You're right.
Got to stay in practice. We'll work on that. With that, we'll move to the town manager section, please, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Gross, members of council. I have a couple of items for you this evening. First of all, I have a briefing that I'll present. This is an amendment to an MOU we have with Roanoke County. Back in 2019, we negotiated a replacement of the revenue sharing agreement we had with Roanoke County for the previous 20 years. This agreement was primarily focused around public safety and some cost-sharing adjustments that we had made because of the loss of revenue with the original revenue sharing agreement. So flash forward a couple of years, the town and the county and the water authority entered into negotiations to transfer our water and wastewater utility to the water authority. As a part of that negotiation, we requested some assistance from Roanoke County on some other public services that we jointly provide to our residents of Vinton and Roanoke County. So what we decided to do to memorialize that is update that 2019 MOU to reflect these additional cost-sharing measures. This agreement does run through 2027, so there's no change to the expiration date of that agreement. It's not an expiration, it's a point that we will 2025 we will convene with the Roanoke County administration to discuss any particular changes that we want to make so that we can make the proper notifications and potentially extend that agreement, but it is potentially could expire in 2027 if we allow it to. The provisions of what was amended in this current revision that you'll be voting on in next council meeting revolves around E911 is the first provision. For a number of years since the county the town got out of hosting our own dispatch, we've been partnering with Roanoke County in their E911 dispatch. We have been paying $450,000 annually, and as a result of this amendment, we will reduce that annual contribution to $150,000, which is a reduction of $300,000. The next item is tipping fees. So for solid waste collection in the town of Vinton provides that service, and we dispose of our waste in the regional landfill. So the county also provides waste collection services. So in this provision of the updated agreement, the county will cover all of the town's tipping fees, which is what the regional resource authority charges us to dispose of our solid waste in the regional landfill. So that will be, currently they provide $110,000 and we're asking for an additional $115,000. Roughly about $225 a year is about what we were budgeting for our tipping fees. This will be a true up at the end of the year, so if it's a little less or a little more than $225, we'll settle that up with the county annually. So in total, that's about a $415,000 swing for assistance that the county's participating with us in the utility transfer. So again, that's kind of the crux of why this amendment's happening. And the last provision of the MOU update is that the Roanoke County currently has 3 board appointments on the West Virginia Water Authority. And this provision says that the town council and the board of supervisors will mutually agree on one of those candidates to represent the Vinton community on the West Virginia Water Authority board. So that is essentially the 3 pieces that's been updated. And Mr.
The only thing I would add, there are some memorializations in here of things from the 2019 agreement that have been accomplished.
Yes, sir.
The transfers related to fire and EMS, staffing issues regarding fire and EMS, certain things that have already been accomplished. We went ahead and put into this amendment, memorialize the fact that those had been accomplished. So there was no outstanding issue about things remaining to be resolved or addressed.
Yeah, awesome.
And so I also just wanted to add that, pass on my appreciation to Roanoke County, the Board of Supervisors, the administration for considering this. It would have been extremely difficult. Our administration team is currently preparing our budget for FY23, and I can tell you that without this assistance, the budget would be really, really difficult. And frankly, I don't know that we could have made the utility transfer this year happen without that assistance. So this is very important and very necessary piece to make that utility transfer even feasible. So we just wanted to acknowledge the county's contribution, and they're willing to assist us in this matter.
Yes.
They will take a similar action next Tuesday, February 8th, to update or to authorize the update of this agreement. And then I'll bring it back to council at our February 15th meeting to take action.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, sir. Council, you have any questions or comments concerning the briefing? Yeah. I just, not to risk of just repeating what Pete said, but I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Roanoke County. They've been great partners on a lot of projects, and this is certainly a big move for the town of Vinton that probably would not have happened, at least not at this time, if it had not been for Roanoke County. They've really stepped up to bat to partner with us. And of course, this is a great benefit for the residents of the town of Vinton and Roanoke County. So it's a win-win situation. But I just want to thank them for their support and for being such great partners throughout this entire development. So it's been it's really been a good example of what a great relationship we do have. So it's been something we should all be proud of. So thank you, Roanoke County. All right. Back to you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, the next item I'll have, actually the next two items, I'll ask our finance director and treasurer to present a couple of items.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council.
Good evening, Ed.
This is the time of year that is really great for us because we get to write off items that are 5 years or older on our personal property in VLF, and it's also an opportunity for us to bring to you how our office is doing on collections, and so you can see how much we're writing off and what we are physically going through in our office. So according to state code, we only have 5 years to collect taxes that are assessed. So at 2021, or 2022, we have to write off our 2016 taxes. And so the amount that we're writing off is we have collected 98.43% of our 2016 taxes. And how this compares to 2015 is we collected a rate of 99.02%. So it is slightly lower than our 2015 collections, but still a very high percentage. And then VLF, we actually have collected 92.85%, and this compares to 2015 at 91.57%. So even though our personal property tax collection rate is slightly down, our VLF rate is actually slightly up. So that's really good to see. And I will say that over this time period, we've taken less aggressive actions due to the pandemic than we normally would have. We didn't do as many employer liens or direct liens like bank liens that we typically would have done. So really good to see high 90 percentile numbers on taxes despite some of our compassionate collections.
Yeah, that is good news. Great job, Ann. Thank you for that. So, council, you have any questions, comments?
I also move the action, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Stovall and a second by Councilmember Mullins to approve the resolution as described by Ann. Susan, if you'd call the roll, please.
Councilmember Lyles?
Yes.
Councilmember Mullins?
Yes.
Councilmember Stovall?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McCarty?
Yes.
Mayor Gross?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next piece is related. This is our water and sewer 5 years and older that we have inactive on our books, and we deem it uncollectible. So we've attempted to collect it for many years, and we have not been able to. Now there is no enforcement that says we have to write it off, but our auditors recommend that we do as a best practice so that we have a more reasonable accounts receivable on our books of what we can get into the town. Now, if somebody does move in can, we try to still collect that. And we'll have to be looking at this with our transfer on any balances and how we want to handle those. Like, do we want to continue to collect them? But for right now, we have before you $14,306 to be written off. And this is for 2016 utility bills. And the collection rate on that is 99.58%. And how that compares to 2015 is 99.59%. So very, very high collection rate on utility.
Yes.
To be disappointed with those numbers.
Those are
amazing.
incredible numbers. The first one was 98, and this one's 99.58. Wow.
Wow.
Incredible.
And
Good
we
job.
just do this like with personal property and water and sewer, stuff like that. We don't like businesses, they don't have to, like 5 years, we're gonna write off their sales taxes or anything, right?
No, and well, because like meals tax is a trustee tax, we always make sure we collect that.
Okay, I'm
So
just
we don't
curious,
write
just
that
make sure
off.
someone can't come in here and do business for 5 years and we're gonna write them off.
No, we'll make sure we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then real estate is 20 years. So I've never had to bring a real estate one before you yet. Typically, they go to tax sale before they ever get to that point.
Wow.
But we have 20 years per the state code to collect real estate.
Yeah. But those percentages are so high. It certainly reflects a lot of hard work.
Wow.
So good job. Good job. Any
And
other-
good paying citizens.
That's true. That's true. Thank you. That's right. Thank you, citizens. All right. Any other comments, questions? Folks, you have the resolution before you that Dan described. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, we have a motion by the Vice Mayor to approve the resolution and a second by
I'll second.
Councilmember Mullins. Please call the roll, Susan.
Councilmember Laws.
Yes.
Councilmember Mullins.
Yes.
Councilmember Stovall.
Yes.
Vice Mayor McCarty.
Yeah.
Mayor Groves.
Yes. All right.
Thank you, Ann.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Good job. Good job. Great job.
Mr. Mayor, before I turn it back over, just a couple comments. Wanted to acknowledge Cody's contributions last week with the preparation of the Water Authority meetings. He did a lot of the legwork behind the scenes, organizing with Sarah all the logistics of that event, and I thought it went extremely well. We were prepared. We didn't have an incredible amount of turnout, but for those who did come, I think they were received some good information, and then the residuals of the video, the website that was developed, the facts, and all of that information that is still available for our citizens should they have that, those questions that come up, our commercial or residential customers, all that information is available. So I just want to acknowledge Cody's contributions to pull all that together. Also wanted to recognize Anita, Mike, and Keith for the work to prepare for the TPO last week for some additional funding requests for the Walnut Avenue project. That's going to be really a transformation of that gateway. And this project originates back 2014, Anita, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
When we originally, town proposed to build a pedestrian bridge to connect Lake Creek and Tinker Creek Greenways. And then as a result of finding out we really couldn't build a bridge in the FEMA, because of FEMA regulations on the property we had purchased, we changed the scope of that project to do bike, pedestrian, and transportation improvements along Walnut Avenue to make the connections. And so this project's a long time in the works, and we're right on the cusp of actually advertising that. And because of cost escalations of materials and just how much work there is out there for contractors now, the price had escalated. So Anita did a lot of work to prepare and get the numbers correct. I know Cody spent a lot of time on the phone, making phone calls and updating folks, and then our two council members who serve on the TPO represented the town extremely well, and appreciate your support to get the approvals. We still have a public hearing, public comment period to get through before we get the funding, but assuming that goes well, looks like the town has a good chance of getting the additional supplemental funding to fully fund that project and go to bid, and hopefully sometime in the early summer, we'll be under construction for the first phase of Walnut Avenue improvement.
I do echo what you say, because, I mean, it came down to, because of the wording of some of the bylaws, honestly, 15 minutes before the meeting started, we were standing back there in the break room, had things spread out beside the microwave and everything, trying to make sure that we had all the i's dotted and the t's crossed. But I do take my hat off to you for definitely for the information you provided, so.
Yep. Cody he picked some of the policy apart.
You did?
And had it swing in our favor, so.
All right.
Cody did an awesome job, like Mike said, within, at very last minute.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Cody. That's good to hear. We certainly want to thank the planning department too. They've worked on this one a long time. So, thank you. And by the way, he looked pretty cool in the video too, didn't he? So good job. Good job. Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, the last comment I'll make is just again, passing off some kudos to Anita and Nathan and Mike and the Planning Commission for all the work they've done on the zoning ordinance. It's been this long haul to pull all this together.
Mike Luckleby, right? Let's just make sure we're talking about the right Mike.
Mike Luckleby.
All mics are in the same category, just some have different roles.
But it has been, that has been, I don't know how many years really behind the scenes to pull this together. But there is a tremendous amount of work that's went into researching the different avenues, the different communities that we kind of benchmarked ourselves to, and trying to find the right balance. And I think we've struck that balance to be modern, as Keith said, business friendly, and more a common sense approach where the average Joe can read the ordinances and understand them. So I think that's going to serve us well over the next, hopefully not 25 years,
Right.
at least the next decade. So just wanted to, pass on my appreciation for their work to get this done. A lot of communities farm this out, but because of our quality staff, we're able to do this in-house by and large, and that's pretty exceptional. To have this amount and deep changes to be done in-house is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And that is all for my comments. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you. And as we mentioned earlier, we do appreciate all the hard work that Planning Commission and the Planning Department's put in. Well, that it's remarkable, actually, what a great document it is. What we ended up with, like you said, Pete, I just want to reiterate something there that I think is extremely important. It's something that's readable. The average guy can read that and have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. And maybe that was not always the case before. So it's a great document, I think. So all right, I don't see any reports from the committees, so we'll move on to council. Councilman Lyles, you want to start this evening? You have any further comments?
Not anything that hadn't already been said. I was going to talk about the TPO meeting, and that's been hashed out. Like Sabrina said, wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. Take advantage of Restaurant Week with your significant other. It's over downtown now, but we're just getting ready to be started, so, in the county, so that's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Vice Mayor, anything further?
Good job to everybody who participated in anything we did tonight. Awesome. And I agree, go get some dinner, but try to stay in Benton.
Yeah.
Try to eat in Benton.
There you go. There you go. All right.
And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Mullins.
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but we have the best staff, and they make us look like, they make our jobs easy. And every time we say that, but it's the truth. All the work that goes into every detail of the ordinances, and the average person doesn't sit there and think, oh, well, I need 5 parking spaces, or you can only have this many, and just to keep things flowing and to keep the stormwater in check. It's amazing. So thank you so much for all the details from the Planning Commission, and once again, Ann, fantastic report. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you very much.
Well, first off, I'd just like to, for the purpose of the minutes, Mr. K. Wood getting the county administrator's job in Roanoke County. I think it was a great hire, especially when you can always hire from within. Echo what you said about the Water Authority meeting. I thought it was great. Even though we didn't have a lot of participation, but But, you know, everybody was prepared. It was great to see all those professionals in the room and have the opportunity to talk to them. And once again, to you, Cody, for your great work. And I need to pass out a big thank you. And that thank you is that, as you very well know, being married for 33 years, there's times when the male, the husband, gets in the doghouse. My good friend over here, Miss McCarty, unless y'all get to her before I do tonight, is getting me out when I walk in the door.
Get out of jail
walk in
free
and
card.
say pre-Valentine's. I'll stop and pick you something up today. But
I
thank
won't
you.
tell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. That was pretty good, yes. We appreciate the candy, Vice Mayor.
Absolutely.
Just a couple of things. I know we still got some work to do tonight. We did have a ribbon cutting at Boomtown CrossFit. That was on January 20th. We certainly want to welcome them to town, and also want to congratulate them. They've already done a great job on that building. That's the building. It's over on 703 Tinker Avenue, just across the railroad tracks there. And they've really fixed it up, painted up, looks good. So we look forward to having them in town. And by the way, they talked about why they selected the name Boomtown, and they thought that was an appropriate name because of all the things that are going on in Vinton, as in a boom town.
That's
So
neat.
I thought that was really special. And I'll skip over some of this, but I do want to thank all those that put together our meeting for the utility transfer that we had on January 25th. It was very, very professional. Also, just want to kind of vaguely thank staff for the teamwork that goes on a regular basis. And also, I especially want to thank council for the teamwork. We work together and give each other heads up on stuff, and that's awesome, guys. So, and a couple of council members have done that in preparation for this meeting, and I appreciate that very much. So, one last thing I want to mention. Gosh, unless you live under a rock, you surely have heard that the National Football League had some great games, you know, and I'm more of a college fan, but I will confess to really burning up some couch time. There were just some absolutely great games, and most of us you know, can pick out certain plays, last-minute catches, or last play field goals and all, and that's all great. But I gotta tell you, my favorite time in all those games was at the opening of the Kansas City Chiefs and Cincinnati Bengals game, and I think you can probably see this on Facebook. I'm not sure, but. Typical opening, you know, they have a celebrity of some type sing the national anthem, and they have a lot of folks on the field with the flag and everything. But they, boy, being in the sound business, I really felt sorry for somebody. They had some technical difficulties, and much of the national anthem was muted. I mean, her microphone was not working at all. So what happened was the crowd, which is usually a pretty loud crowd anyhow, from what I hear, in Arrowhead Stadium, just picked it up and they started singing the national anthem. And so the crowd was singing in. Once in a while, the performer's mic would kick in, but the crowd actually sang the national anthem. So it was a really, really, for me, a really great moment, one of those American moments, you know, and a lot of good football on TV, but that was my favorite time. And so thank you folks for that personal time and allowing me to share that.
Mayor, since it meant so much to you, I'm in charge of the pledge.
Yeah.
If you want, we could all just start singing the national anthem.
Well, you can sing it, okay?
Well, no, we all would.
Your mic's gonna go out, right, Keith?
Right.
Yeah. Got somebody back in that room, got their finger on the switch, I hope.
That would be kind of cool. We could do that. We could do that. But I'll tell you, the way that came off, I thought at first, wow, did they plan this? It was just so cool, but obviously they did, and it was really neat. Anyhow. All right, moving right along, we do want to request a closed session. We'd like to request to convene in a closed meeting pursuant to 2.2-3711A1 of the 1950 Code of Virginia as amended for discussion of the annual performance of the town manager. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lyles. Who was that over there? Okay, a second by Vice Mayor. Did we do a voice vote?
Voice.
All-
Move on.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Folks, thank you very much. God bless you. We